One Tuesday morning, Selena Marlowe stepped into the Harborview diner for her third day on the job, adjusting her crisp white shirt tucked into black pants, her highlighted brown blonde hair pulled into a tight bun and red lipstick adding a touch of confidence to her smile. At 25, she had seen enough tough shifts in other places to know how to handle a busy breakfast rush, but today something felt off right away. The usual chatter among the staff hushed as she hung up her coat, and Nina Flores, the shy waitress around her age, glanced at the clock with wide eyes before ducking into the kitchen. Selena grabbed her notepad and headed to the counter, where George Patel, the 47-year-old manager, was wiping down the surface a little too vigorously. He caught her eye and leaned in close. "Listen, Selena, if a guy in a black Tesla pulls up, just stay busy. Let someone else handle him." She raised an eyebrow, curious but not alarmed yet. "But, bad tipper or something?" George shook his head, his voice dropping. "Worse. Dorian Kessler, tech billionaire, owns half the startups in town. He's got a mouth on him that could strip paint off walls. Staff learned the hard way, argue back and he'll make your day hell." Selena chuckled softly, tying on her apron. "Sounds like a real charmer. But I've dealt with worse. I'm saving for grad school, not here to play games." Just then, the door swung open with a chime, and a hush fell over the diner like a blanket. Dorian Kessler strode in, 35 years old, tall and broad-shouldered in a red loose t-shirt over white pants, his presence sucking the air out of the room. He didn't bother with a hello, just headed straight for his usual booth by the window, sliding in and pulling out his phone. Nina peeked from the kitchen door, her face paling, and whispered to another server before vanishing entirely. George muttered under his breath and slipped into his office, leaving the floor oddly empty except for a few regulars nursing their coffees. Selena watched it all unfold, piecing together the puzzle. Eli Morrison, the 68-year-old retired schoolteacher at the counter with his newspaper, caught her gaze and gave a subtle nod, as if to say this was nothing new. She straightened up, deciding she wasn't about to hide on her third day. Grabbing a pot of fresh coffee, she walked over to Dorian's booth, her steps steady. "Morning. Coffee to start." He didn't look up from his screen, just extended his mug without a word. As she poured, he finally spoke, his tone clipped. "My usual. Don't mess it up like last time." Selena paused, setting the pot down. "I don't know what your usual is. You'll have to tell me." The words hung in the air, and the diner seemed to hold its breath. A fork clinked somewhere in the back, and Eli shifted in his seat, watching over the rim of his glasses. Dorian finally lifted his head, his eyes narrowing as he sized her up. "Excuse me? Do you even work here?" Selena met his stare evenly, her notepad ready. 3 days in, but yeah, I do." "So, what's the order?" "Eggs? Pancakes?" He leaned back, a smirk twisting his features, clearly not used to this. "Black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, bacon crisp, toast no butter. And hurry it up, I don't have all day." She jotted it down without flinching. "Got it? Won't be long." As she turned toward the kitchen, she could feel eyes on her from every corner. Nina emerged just enough to hand off the order to the cook, whispering to Selena. "You talk back? Oh man, he's gonna explode." Selena shrugged, plating up a side of hash browns for another table. He ordered like anyone else. No big deal. But inside, she felt a spark of adrenaline. She'd faced bullies before, from dead-end jobs to tough family moments, and backing down never sat right with her. Minutes later, the bell dinged from the kitchen, and Selena balanced the tray back to his booth. She set down the plate neatly, refilling his coffee without a word. Dorian poked at the eggs with his fork, then looked up. "These better not be runny. Last girl got it wrong and heard about it." Selena crossed her arms lightly. "They're over easy, like you asked. If there's a problem, I can fix it." He took a bite, chewing slowly, his irritation simmering. "You new here or just clueless? People know better than to question me." She didn't budge. "I'm new, but not clueless. Just doing my job." Eli sipped his coffee across the way, hiding a small grin behind his cup as he turned a page in his paper. Dorian set down his fork, leaning forward. "Do you have any idea who I am?" I built a company from nothing, employ half this town's tech scene. My time's worth more in a minute than you'll make slinging plates all year. Selena felt a flicker of anger but kept her voice calm, like she was reasoning with a stubborn customer. Then maybe you should stop wasting it arguing with me and just eat your breakfast. The words landed like a quiet slap, and for a second, Dorian's confident mask slipped. He blinked, caught off guard, his mouth opening but no retort coming out right away. Gasps whispered through the diner, subtle but there. Nina froze midway through wiping a table, and George cracked his office door just enough to peer out. Dorian recovered quickly, his voice sharpening. You got some nerve. Most people here know to keep their mouths shut and serve. Selena tilted her head slightly. And most customers know basic manners go a long way. Anything else for you? He stared at her, the intrigue mixing with his annoyance, like he was seeing something new. Yeah, actually. What's your name? She pointed to her name tag. Selena. And yours? He huffed a laugh, almost disbelieving. Dorian Kessler. Remember it because... But before he could finish, the door chimed again, pulling her attention as a family of 4 walked in, settling at a nearby table. Selena nodded to him. Be right back. As she walked away, Dorian watched her go, his breakfast cooling untouched for a moment. Eli murmured to himself, well, that's a first. In the kitchen, Nina tugged at Selena's sleeve. You okay? He looked mad. Selena smiled faintly. I'm fine. He's just not used to hearing no. George emerged finally, approaching her with a worried frown. Selena, what happened out there? I told you to let it slide. She handed him the next order slip. I didn't argue, I served him. That's the job, right? Dorian, meanwhile, picked at his food, glancing her way every few seconds. When she returned to top off his coffee, he spoke up again. You always this bold with customers? Selena poured steadily. Only the ones who need it. Makes the day more interesting. He set down his mug, crossing his arms. Interesting, huh? Most waitresses here scatter like roaches when I walk in. She capped the pot. Maybe because you treat them like that. People aren't bugs, they're just trying to get by. His eyes flashed, but there was a hint of something else, like a crack in his armor. You think you know me after 5 minutes? Selena met his gaze. I know enough. Arrogance doesn't impress me. Now, is the food all right, or do you want something else? He paused, fork midway to his mouth, and for the first time that morning, he seemed to really consider his words. It's fine. Better than usual, actually. Selena nodded, turning to check on the family. But Dorian wasn't done. Wait, why aren't you scared like the rest? George probably warned you. She glanced back over her shoulder. He did. But I've got my own reasons for being here. Grad school doesn't pay for itself. And backing down from guys like you? That's not how I roll. He leaned back, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Guys like me? Enlighten me, what's that mean? Selena set down her pot on the counter nearby, facing him fully now. The type who thinks money buys respect. But it doesn't. Respect's earned, not demanded. Dorian's expression shifted, the sneer fading into something more thoughtful. Huh? In my world, it's all about power. You push or you get pushed. She shook her head lightly. Maybe that's why you're eating alone every Tuesday. Power's lonely. The words hit a nerve, and he looked away for a second, out the window at his Tesla gleaming in the lot. When he turned back, his voice was lower. You don't know anything about my life. Selena softened just a touch. True. But I know about mine. And treating people decently? That's free. He opened his mouth to respond, but she added, Look, if you want to talk more, fine. But I've got other tables. Dorian nodded slowly, picking up his toast. Fair enough. But this conversation isn't over. Selena picked up her pot again. Didn't think it was. Enjoy your meal. As she moved on, the diner started to buzz with quiet energy again, the tension easing like a storm passing. Nina sidled up to her at the counter. I can't believe you said that. He's actually eating now, not complaining. George overheard and sighed. Just be careful, Selena. He's not the type to forget. But Eli, folding his paper, caught her eye with approval. For Selena, it was just another shift, until it wasn't. Back at his booth, Dorian finished his eggs, his mind clearly elsewhere. When Selena brought the check, he slid a card across without looking. "Keep the change." She rang it up and returned, but he held up a hand. "One more thing. You said respect's earned. How do you figure someone like me earns it from someone like you?" Selena paused, the receipt in hand. "Simple. Start by acting like a person, not a boss. Say please once in a while. Acknowledge when someone's doing their job well." He chuckled dryly. "That's it? Sounds too easy." She handed him the slip. "It is easy. Most people do it without thinking." Dorian signed it, adding a tip that made her eyes widen slightly, though she didn't react. "All right, Selena. Challenge accepted. But tell me what?" "What?" Dorian leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and defensiveness. "Why you're really here, slinging hash in a place like this if you're aiming for grad school. Doesn't add up." She set the receipt down beside his plate and considered her answer for a moment, her tone steady and honest. "Life doesn't always add up neatly. Lost my scholarship last year after some family stuff, so I'm piecing it together shift by shift. What about you? Why come to a small-town diner when you could eat anywhere?" He picked up the pen, signing the check with a flourish before sliding it back. "Habit, I guess. Started coming here years ago, before the money. Reminds me of simpler times." Selena nodded, pocketing the slip. "Well, if you want simple, try treating people that way. Might make your mornings better." As she walked away to clear another table, Dorian finished his coffee, watching her with a newfound interest that irritated him as much as it intrigued him. He left soon after, but not before leaving a tip that was generous enough to make Nina gasp when she saw it later. The rest of the shift passed in a blur for Selena, with the staff buzzing about the encounter, but she brushed it off, focusing on her tables and the growing stack of tips toward her tuition fund. The next Tuesday rolled around, and the familiar black Tesla pulled up outside the Harborview diner, sending the usual ripple of tension through the staff. Nina spotted it first and started toward the kitchen, but Selena called her back gently. "Hey, it's fine. I've got this one." George watched from the counter, shaking his head but saying nothing as Dorian entered, his red t-shirt rumpled like he'd been up all night coding. This time, though, he paused at the door, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Selena. "Morning, Selena," he said, his voice gruff but lacking its usual edge. She approached with the coffee pot, pouring him a cup without missing a beat. "Morning, Dorian. Usual today." He nodded, taking a seat. "Yeah, but make the bacon extra crisp. And, thanks." The word hung there, simple yet stunning, and Nina, eavesdropping from nearby, whispered to George. "Did he just say thanks? To a waitress?" Over the following weeks, Dorian's visits became a subtle routine of change. He started asking about Selena's studies during quieter moments, leaning in as she refilled his mug. "So, grad school for what? Business? Tech?" She wiped down the table next to his booth one morning, replying casually. "Psychology, actually. Want to help people sort through their messes." He chuckled, stirring his coffee. "Like mine, you mean?" Selena met his gaze evenly. "If the shoe fits. But everyone's got messes, yours just come with a bigger bank account." He slipped back into arrogance once, snapping at Nina for a slow refill, but Selena caught his eye with a raised eyebrow, and he corrected himself immediately. "Sorry, Nina. Rough morning." Nina blinked in surprise, mumbling that it was okay as she hurried away. One day, as Selena served his plate, she noticed him staring out the window, his phone untouched for once. "You always this hard on people, or just the ones who can't fight back?" she asked, her voice light but pointed. Dorian turned to her, his expression softening unexpectedly. "Pressure, deadlines, expectations, they pile up. Makes me lash out." Selena set down the creamer. "Stress doesn't excuse cruelty. Everyone's carrying something heavy." He nodded slowly, taking a bite before responding. "You're right. But no one's called me on it before." "Why'd you?" Selena finished wiping the counter and turned back to him, her expression open but firm. "Why'd I what? Call you out?" "Because someone had to. Hiding from rudeness doesn't make it go away, it just lets it grow." Dorian set his fork down, leaning back in the booth as he processed her words, his usual defensiveness giving way to a rare moment of reflection. "Fair point. Most people just take the paycheck and move on." She nodded, refilling a nearby customer's water before returning. "And that's why places like this end up feeling like battlegrounds. But if one person pushes back, maybe it changes the air." He glanced around the diner, noticing for the first time how the staff moved a little easier around him lately, and murmured, "Maybe it does. You know, Selena, I've built empires on being tough, but toughness without heart? It's empty." She crossed her arms lightly, considering him. "Then fill it. Start small, right here, right now." Dorian nodded, a subtle shift in his posture as he picked up his coffee, the steam rising like a quiet agreement between them. The weeks that followed brought a steady undercurrent of change to the Harborview diner, subtle at first but undeniable as Dorian's Tuesdays evolved from dreaded arrivals to anticipated routines. One crisp autumn morning, the leaves outside turning shades of amber under a clear sky, Dorian pulled up in his Tesla earlier than usual, the engine humming softly before cutting off. Inside, Selena was already midway through the breakfast rush, her bun holding firm despite the flurry of orders, her red lipstick a constant amid the steam from the griddle. Nina bustled past with a tray of pancakes, casting a quick glance at the door as it chimed. "It's him," she whispered, but this time without the usual panic, more like curiosity. George, polishing glasses behind the counter, raised an eyebrow but stayed put, watching as Dorian entered, not alone but accompanied by a young executive named Alex, a lanky 20-something in a tailored suit, clutching a sleek tablet like a shield. They slid into the booth, Dorian gesturing for Alex to sit across from him. Selena approached with 2 menus tucked under her arm, her steps measured and calm. "Morning, Dorian. And guest. Coffee to start." Dorian looked up with a nod, his voice warmer than before. "Black for me as always. Alex here will have the same, make it strong." Alex barely glanced at her, muttering, "Yeah, whatever. And hurry it up, we've got a meeting in an hour." Selena poured without comment, but she caught Dorian's eye, a silent question passing between them. As she turned back to the kitchen, the busboy Miguel, a quiet high school kid working weekends, carried a bin of clean silverware past their table. In the haste of the rush, he tripped slightly on a loose floor mat, sending a few forks and knives clattering to the ground with a sharp metallic ring that cut through the diner's hum. Alex snorted loudly, leaning over to peer at the mess. "Come on, kid, watch where you're going. Some of us are trying to actually accomplish something here, not play janitor." The words landed harshly, and the diner seemed to pause. Nina froze mid-pour at another table, George set down his rag with a sigh, and Eli Morrison looked up from his newspaper, his wise eyes narrowing. Everyone waited, breaths held, for Dorian's reaction. In the old days, he might have joined in with a cutting laugh or dismissed it entirely. But this time, Dorian's face tightened, his jaw setting as he turned to Alex with a sharp edge in his voice. "Don't talk to him like that. Pick it up yourself if it bothers you so much. If you can't respect the people keeping this place running, you won't last a week in my company." Alex blinked, his tablet forgotten in his lap, stammering. I didn't mean, sorry man." He bent awkwardly to help Miguel gather the utensils, his face flushing under the unexpected rebuke. The moment rippled through the diner like a wave, breaking the tension into whispers of surprise. Nina leaned toward George behind the counter. "Did you hear that? Dorian just defended Miguel. Like actually stood up for him." George nodded slowly, a faint smile creeping in. "Times are changing. That new waitress might have something to do with it." Selena, overhearing as she plated their eggs, hid a small smile of her own, feeling a quiet surge of validation. She hadn't set out to reform anyone, but seeing the shift felt like progress, a reminder that her refusal to cower had planted seeds. When she delivered the food, Dorian met her gaze with a subtle nod of acknowledgement, as if to say he was trying. Alex ate in subdued silence, the lesson sinking in, while Dorian dove into his meal with more focus than usual. From that pivotal morning, Dorian's influence began to extend beyond the diner's walls, weaving into the fabric of the small town in ways that surprised even him. He started by quietly sponsoring small scholarships, beginning with Nina after overhearing her confide in Selena one slow afternoon about her mounting student loans for her nursing degree. The next Tuesday, as the lunch crowd thinned, Dorian lingered at his booth, waiting until Nina passed by with a fresh pot of coffee. "Nina, a word?" he said, his tone uncharacteristically gentle. She approached cautiously, pouring him a refill. "Yes, Mr. Kessler?" He slid an envelope across the table. "This should cover your tuition for the semester. Consider it an investment in someone who's got potential." Nina's eyes widened as she opened it, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know what to say." "Why me?" Dorian glanced toward Selena, who was clearing a table nearby. "Because good people deserve a break. And I've learned that the hard way lately." Nina hugged the envelope to her chest, tears welling up. "Thank you. This means everything." As she hurried back to the kitchen to compose herself, Selena caught Dorian's eye and gave him a thumbs up, her voice low when she approached. "That was decent of you. She's been stressing about those loans for months." Word spread quickly through the town, with Dorian's acts of quiet generosity becoming a new tradition, funding a local library's tech upgrade after chatting with Eli about outdated computers, or covering repairs for the community center where Miguel volunteered. No longer did he storm into the diner like a conqueror claiming his territory. Instead, he arrived with a casual wave to the staff, settling into his booth with a sense of ease. Tuesdays transformed into his personal reset, a sanctuary from the relentless pace of his tech empire, where he could unwind without the mask of ruthlessness. One such morning, as rain pattered against the windows, Dorian turned to Eli at the counter after ordering. "Eli, you mentioned that book last week, To Kill a Mockingbird. Still think it's worth a reread as an adult?" Eli set down his coffee, adjusting his glasses with a thoughtful nod. "Oh, absolutely. It's all about seeing the world through someone else's eyes, empathy in action. I can lend you my annotated copy if you're serious." Dorian accepted with a genuine, "I'd appreciate that. Been too long since I read something that wasn't a balance sheet." Eli handed it over the next week, and their conversations grew, touching on life lessons and regrets, with Selena occasionally chiming in as she passed. "Sounds like you're turning into a regular book club here," she teased one day, refilling their mugs. As the bond deepened, the personal layers peeled back further. One late morning in early winter, with the diner quiet save for the hum of the heater and the scent of fresh pie baking, Dorian waited until the rush ebbed before signaling Selena over. She slid into the booth across from him, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's on your mind? You look like you've got something heavy." He stirred his coffee slowly, his eyes meeting hers with unfiltered honesty. "Selena, you're the only one who didn't run from me that first day. Everyone else scattered like I was a storm coming through, but you stood there, notepad in hand, treating me like just another guy ordering eggs." She leaned back, her smirk familiar but softened by the moment. "You were just another guy, rude sure, but nothing I hadn't handled before. Why bring it up now?" Dorian set down his spoon, his voice lowering. "Because you reminded me I was more than the billionaire with the sharp tongue and the endless deals. You showed me I was human, with flaws that needed fixing, not ignoring. I built walls to protect myself, but they kept everyone out, including the parts of me worth saving." Selena reached across, not for comfort but for emphasis, her tone steady. "Took you long enough to figure that out. But credit where it's due, you listened. Not everyone does." He chuckled, the sound genuine and light. "Yeah, well, you didn't give me much choice. And I'm grateful for it. Changed how I see everything." She stood up, patting his shoulder lightly. "Good. Now keep it up. The world's got enough walls already." The culmination came on a particularly stormy Tuesday, the kind where thunder rumbled distantly and the rain sheeted against the glass, turning the outside world into a blur. Dorian finished his usual, eggs over easy, bacon crisp, paying with his card and adding a tip that had become his norm, generous but not flashy. As he gathered his things, a family of 3 pushed through the door from the downpour, a young mom balancing a toddler on her hip, the dad holding an umbrella that dripped onto the welcome mat. Dorian paused at the threshold, then stepped aside, holding the door wide open despite the wind tugging at it. "After you folks, come on in out of that mess." The dad nodded gratefully. "Thanks, appreciate it." The mom smiled as she passed, the little girl peeking up at him curiously. Once they were inside, shaking off the rain, Dorian glanced back into the diner, his eyes finding Selena at the counter where she stacked clean plates. She met his gaze with a knowing nod, no words needed, the transformation complete in that simple act of courtesy. Eli, nursing his coffee at the end of the counter with his newspaper folded neatly, watched the exchange unfold and leaned toward George, who was tallying the register. "Never thought I'd see the day." Dorian Kessler, holding doors and sponsoring kids' futures. From tyrant to town hero. George chuckled softly, glancing at Selena. "Yeah, and it all started because she wouldn't back down. One voice can shift the whole tide." Selena just shrugged, tying a fresh apron string as she prepared for the lunch shift, her mind already on the next order. Sometimes, it only took one person willing to stand their ground to unravel arrogance and weave in a thread of humanity. If you enjoyed this tale of standing tall against arrogance, hit that like button. It means the world to us storytellers. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever stood your ground and seen it change someone? We'd love to hear. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care out there.